All right, what we want to do is have an open discussion, right? So really encourage folks, jump in, share what your experiences are and how we think the future of film is really going to evolve. So I want to start with you on the end here, Anish, and I want to, you've been part of some tremendous films in the past. I mean, Tron as a perfect example. You know a lot about what, experiences are. And so what I'd like you to do is talk a little bit about the film experience. How do you see it evolving? How do you see it changing? Maybe talk a little bit about some of the theaters that you're creating.
Good morning, everyone. I think in terms of film, if I just touch upon, how the making of film will change, along with the technology, or how technology will enable that. In the last few years, we've already, started to see how technology is enabling the kind of films that we are seeing. Say, for example, Life of Pi, where, you made a film about a story in the sea and a tiger, where the sea was not real. The movie was shot in a small swimming pool in Taiwan, and the tiger was obviously not real. That was a movie, done by Rhythm and Hughes, the company that we own and acquired later. And we also saw Jungle Book, where, you have all the animals, and obviously none of the animals are real. So I think what's happening is that on the movie and the visual effects side, you're able to bring in the creatures which obviously don't exist and are able to tell the stories which, you were not able to tell before. What happens next if we take the same thread forward? Right now, we still haven't seen the digital human playing a lead in the movie. We have seen digital doubles. We have seen, when some actors are not able to do certain stunts, or the kind of stunts we want to do are not possible, the digital stunt come in the play. But at what stage the digital human will take over? I'm sure it's not too far in the next few years. And when that happens, what happens to the whole storytelling and what happens to the experience of cinema? You actually, have your actors, even after they have passed away, playing a lead role. Or a studio like ours or MPC can create a digital character who could be a lead role, but in reality he doesn't exist. But he exists on your Instagram, he exists on your Facebook, he exists, on entire social media. And social media is, slowly becoming more than a reality. So he exists in the parallel reality, but not in the real world. So that allows you to, tell the stories and characters in a different way. Plus, you can make the movies entirely in the studio. You actually don't have to go out to bigger locations and, do anything. Just put a green screen around. Yes, it's still getting there, but, a lot of those movies which you see are superhero movies are something where, I would say 70% of the work has happened within the studio. And I think that allows the storytelling in a different way. That's one answer. Maybe I'll let others speak and come back to the theaters.
Really curious. I mean, Melissa and Winslow, you guys have been focusing on an entirely different experience. Maybe you could share a little bit of that. And it certainly, I think, will relate back to some of the things Marcie and that we've been experiencing here overall in a grander way. So.
Yeah, so last year we were here in Cannes. We were bringing Giant. And Giant is about a family hiding in a basement during bombs, and it's a virtual reality experience where you get to be in that same situation with the family. And today we brought 3, which is both projects are really done in a collaboration with HP, and we are really grateful for that, because maybe technology was incredibly important for both of these projects in order to make the audience not sick, just to even just for that. So 3 is about you become a tree actually in this experience. You started as a seed underground, and you start growing, and you pierce through the ground, and you get branches, and you can move your arms, and that way you're moving branches, and your body becomes a trunk, and you get to experience what unfortunately way too many trees experience today in the rainforests. And our third project that we would like to do next is actually would be a mixed reality project. And we know that HP is this summer releasing mixed reality headsets that we are eager to try. So these kind of 3 projects would be part of the same trilogy, in which Giant is about how humankind is destroying humans, and then 3, how do we destroy nature, and the 3rd one would be about hope.
So how about some of the technologies? I mean, what I found amazing, Winslow, is the experience over there, and you didn't give me even a setup on it, but
Yeah, we don't like to.
yeah, so I don't want to give it away, okay? But it was you brought a really rich mix of technologies to bear, and I'm curious. I mean, Marcie, Winslow, Anish, what are some of those technologies you see, and how do you intend to use them?
Sure. Is my mic on? I'm not exactly. There we go. So yeah, I think that technology is most effective when you don't necessarily realize it. I also, was profoundly impacted when I saw Her, just because the idea of like, yeah, it's so small, it's so smart, and it feels like there's another person. And that person, we later realize, is even more advanced than the person who's using it. But for us in this, as soon as you get in the headset, put the headphones on, and realize there's spatial audio, and that basically we're taking your senses that you already know, your eyes and your ears, but also then tapping into other ones. You were mentioning smell. For us, that's super important. We worked with 2 different companies, one of them called Scent Communication, the other one called International Flavors and Fragrances, and we developed a custom scent track. So these are things too that, with all this high tech, we were using the Z series workstations along with the Quadro cards from NVIDIA, but then we're using organic molecules, which are things that we experience every day, but we're making sure that we use technology to sequence them, to be able to make them part of the experience, to enhance the experience. Scent is something that is, associated with our memories, and in parts of our past, we can trigger them in a second by tapping into the olfactory. So for us, that was really great to be able to put the person there. When they take the headset off, after also experiencing like the sensation of wind, after the tree that you become, the experience is called a kapok, which is an emergent tree. So it's one of the highest. It grows to be one of the tallest in the rainforest. And then once you grow above the canopy, you feel the breeze, and you don't think about it. You just feel it, and that's where this technology really has incredible, it can be impactful in ways that we don't fully understand right now, and that's why it's so interesting to be involved in this, to be able to push the boundaries of what's possible. Commercial headsets have only been around for 2 years, and the idea of them, started probably 50 years ago, but nobody had the ability to actually try them. And now we're seeing that they're in the house, people are able to use their smartphone for it, and this, again, yeah, very, very rudimentary what it can do right now, but in 10, 15 years, this will be, creating experiences which will be able to change the hearts and minds of pretty much anyone who has them. So it's very exciting for us to be working here and also be incorporating technology in a way that feels seamless and organic at times.
So I was fortunate to work with Winslow and Milica on Tree and Giant. And what I think is really interesting about the new technology is creators are pushing it. And so it makes companies like HP and Technicolor have to find a frictionless way for the creativity to come out. And that's what's so exciting about VR and AR is, we're building the plane as we're flying it. And we're having to find new and interesting ways to keep people engaged and to keep the content creators allowing what it is that they do, and that's create those stories, those rich stories. And so I think that what will happen in the future is you'll have more content creators like Winslow and Milica who really want to push the technology, which really in turn turns us into a place where we have to innovate as fast as we possibly can. And that's what makes it really interesting, when you're able to build those pipelines and really build a way and weave the technology into the story.
Yeah. Well, I have to confess, Marcie and Anish, I watched Life of Pi 12 times. I did. And the tiger never ceases to surprise me when he comes out. And I still don't understand the island, but that's a different issue altogether. But a fantastic film that, was a true experience. So.
And I think that was one of the first films that really pushed you into immersion and really gave you a sense of this is real. This could be real. And I think Hugo Cabret did the same thing. Yeah. And as you see this evolution over time, over those 5 films that won visual effects and cinematography Academy Awards, I think that's why you see this push to really be inside the story and to really understand what the scent was, what it felt like. And I think we have people who are a lot smarter because as they're growing up with this technology, they're able to push it. So it's really an exciting time for all of us.
So let's take, a film like Life of Pi, or it'll be interesting to see if you've read the book Ready Player One, what could potentially happen with that when it comes out. But let's take an experience like that and let's project it 10 years in the future. What do you envision?
Read the book, but I would, you asked me the other question earlier, and I'll try to mix both of them, that what happens to the future of cinema. Yeah. I would say, and when I say cinema, I would say, the movies that we are making and how we are experiencing those movies. I think the way we are watching movies right now, very soon there could be a small object which can project the movie for you in a 4K or a 2K in your house, and it will be very powerful that it can stream by itself. So the movies that we are watching right now in the theaters, you can experience them in your house, projected on a wall, and with your friends. So that, and and the way technology is going, a lot of things which maybe are expensive today, like a sound system, all those things where the prices will start to come down and more people will be able to afford it. So that's I would say to a large portion of how you're going to experience a movie is going to be like this way. So what happens to the theater? And this is an area where we really specialize, and we build some of the most the biggest theaters, something like theaters which are in the Guinness Book of World Record for being the biggest screen. And we are working on, we call it Theater Next. So what happens in the Theater Next? The moment you walk into the theater, every wall which is there is telling a story. Every wall is having a projection system attached to it, and there are characters playing something which, so the whole canvas of the theater is something that you use to tell a story. Yes, the smell kicks in, all the seat effects that you have where there is heat, there is water, there are tricklers, there are all kinds of things which you can sense are being satisfied by your seat. There are animatronics in the theaters, so while you're watching a movie on the screen, the animatronics kicks in from the side, and these are physical, mechanical, electronic creatures which are there with you while you are experiencing a cinema. And the visuals which you are seeing are not just 2K. Most of the movies are 2K. The visuals, like one of the attraction that we recently did, where we have gone up to 24K resolution. So that's 12 times of your regular 2K resolutions. We've gone to from 24 FPS to 60 FPS in stereo. So if you just even talk about rendering, which I'll come back to, but your experience becomes more seamless. The visuals are very high quality, and the whole theater is your cinema hall and is telling you the story. That's one type of theater. There's other type of theater that we're working on where it's like a stage. Imagine, a very similar structure like this. Maybe your seats are slanted and we are having a talk, or we are doing a small play, as live actors, and your seats, which are, slanted in this manner, turns 180 degree, and the other side of your 180 degree is a dome screen, and you start to have a different experience. So in a 20-minute or 30-minute experience, you are experiencing live actors, and you are also experiencing something that is, being given to you in a different way in a dome screen. So that's where the theaters of future will go, along with AR and VR, and as it gets to go beyond the DOS, and it becomes a lot more immersive in the visual quality and the fidelity increase. I think this is something where we, I would say from stop being just delivering stories, we start delivering experiences. And that's, I would say, could be the future.
Yeah, and I think that what you need to understand about these very high-end visual effects films, oftentimes the studios are building these visual effects assets and they're not using them again. And so they just sit in a shelf in an archive. What's so amazing about VR and AR is, what would it be like for you to take home one of those assets? What would it be like for rather than having your kids playing with stuffed animals, they're actually playing and interacting with those digital assets in their home, perhaps on their shoulder, perhaps in their room. And I think that it's about extending those experiences of those films that you love so much. So it's interacting with those assets in a very different way.
I also think that Ready Player One is kind of the perfect example because it's so meta in the sense that the experiences that you can create from it, it's a linear narrative, but the idea is that it's, these people who are trying to sort of, like a community of people who are trying to basically get the fortune of the creator, but they're all doing it inside of this virtual world. So then we think about, what is the future of entertainment? Maybe it's not a linear narrative. What if it's a sandbox where people are able to be the protagonist? When we look at film, it's amazing. We can see things. The director can frame all the shots, but as soon as we put the headset on, we are the cameraman, we are the editor, we are the protagonist, and it's this whole new opportunity where also when there's somebody else in the experience, if there's thousands of other people in the experience, then we're building that narrative as we go, and we don't necessarily know what the outcome's going to be, and the sense of how intimate and personal it can be. And also sort of like the ability to create these things inside of the virtual worlds themselves. We, just like you said, we can't possibly know what the future is, but these are the ways in which I think the future stories will be told.
Well, and I also think that the kids of today are telling those stories. You just look at Snapchat and you look at Instagram and the stories that they're creating. So it's just a natural evolution for them to go into a headset and to be that person creating their own story. I agree, Ready Player One. I make everybody in the tech read that book. And I make them read it over and over again because as we keep growing into this world, it keeps evolving in a way where it's like, oh my gosh, that's happening. And I encourage everyone to read it. It's not that scary. It's actually quite entertaining. And I believe that that will be a big moment in 18 months when it's released and people actually see it and see what the world could potentially be.
Another exciting thing about this whole world of virtual reality right now is really that, for example, Winslow and I made this project Giant last year. It was us, a scriptwriter. We built a team of friends. We got accepted at Sundance, had a premiere there, and managed to move the audience. People started coming out of Giant crying, understanding more things about war. And then that's where we met Marcie. We started meeting people from Hollywood who were open-minded and like futuristic oriented enough to understand that they should be that we should be all working together, which I think that's where we're kind of breaking certain rules that exist, the VR is right now anyone's game, because when you go to a festival, every project is done in a different way. So you have to first it's exciting time to be a VR creator, but you have to be very brave to just let yourself forget about any pre-existing rule about anything. And I think I'm actually hoping that can maybe even change how we look just in our personal lives and the world around us. Just let's forget about everything and push the best out of ourselves, and let's innovate as much as we can.
Yeah, I think you hit on that. I mean, that really does harken to that theme of, art imitates life, life imitates art, is you can visualize, you can view things of today in a different perspective. Winslow, you touched on something that I find very profound, and I'd really like to hear the comments from the panel here, and that is, the film of today tends to be a very linear experience, and even in a situation in which you're doing is backtracking in time, it goes back to a specific time, right? And you maintain a thread that's in one direction. What happens when it's no longer linear? When it's a complete experience, when, you can become the protagonist in a movie, or you can view it from a different perspective entirely. How does that change the creative process or the future of what we do?
Well, I think that we have to think of it like, we have to sort of, again, think of it without the technology. Like, as technology becomes more, I'd say more advanced but more seamless, then we're gonna notice it less. Because it's just going to be enhancing, and we're going to be playing off of the way in which we deal with objects. User experience, with technology is to make things feel like innate, like we already know how to use them. And so I think that the more that we can integrate that into the storytelling, the more that we'll be able to enhance these things. But I also think that we're sort of stuck in our minds of how can we replicate reality. But the interesting thing about this technology is that we're actually able to simulate surreality. What is it like to be a tree? What is it like to be any type of animal? What is it like to be, someone in the future or someone in the past? These are things that we should be thinking about that this technology can afford us. I also think that when we think of virtual reality, oftentimes I think, again, we're sort of closing ourselves off into thinking, how can we just immerse ourselves in the frame? But then we're not thinking about all the interactivity that comes with it. So with virtual reality, we're seeing that it's a point where it's sort of surrounded by pre-existing forms of expression and art, say traditional film, immersive theater, video games, and then also just traditional social human interaction. And so this is where things can get really interesting. And also, as you said, playing with time, we can simulate that inside the headset. How people refer to 4D as sort of the idea of time, or also they call that haptics. Sometimes 4D can get a little misconstrued. But these are things that we're going to also be able to unlock ways of how we're going to be able to process time and ourselves and everyone around us. So it's very exciting.
Yeah.
And viewers become part of your artwork in a way. Like when you do 3D, like people, you are in the experience, but people are looking at you. So it kind of goes along with all this social media and all our lives being like mixed and exposed and shared, and it's no longer like the actor is on the screen and it's a superstar. Now you can become your superstar. So
yeah, truly amazing. How about we spoke a lot about VR, AR. How about other technologies and how they might impact? As an example, Anish, we were talking about artificial intelligence and the impact upon movies. How do you see that? That was not an obvious one. I don't know if others have thought about that as well.
I think in terms of AI, I think that could be the most, something that could be most revolutionary, tongue twisted, revolutionary. I think there's a lot happening on that. If I'm just trying to think in my head where I'm speaking, there would be, AI is already helping and working on the technology side in terms of how it can reduce the cost of making movies. Slowly, AI is also, becoming more and more stronger and starting to read the scripts which are getting developed. And I'm keeping, this discussion away from AR, VR, or anything. I'm just trying to be in the normal filmmaking, what impact technology can have. I think AI at some point will start to write scripts, will start to doctor scripts, will start to polish scripts, will just analyze the script that you have written, and when you submit it to AI can give you 10 different analyses of where your script stands versus various movies that have been told. And at the end of the day, there are very few stories that you can tell. Every time a new story comes out, it's somewhere related to something that's already been told. So right now, when the AI becomes as powerful as human brain, or maybe even more, within few minutes, it can analyze your scripts and tell you where your script fits in. I think that itself is a huge change to what can happen. It can also help you in analyzing your visuals, your color tones, your it can also get into a point where it can help you make the process also more non-linear, where it becomes more interactive. And as the cost of making production reduces, you can even in the VR, you can start having more threads to the story, and the AI can understand what's going on in your brain, if there could be something that you are wearing, and help you navigate the story in the manner that you would like, and those threads are already existing in the story at the story level. So that could just expand the experience in a whole different way, which, you know, obviously I can't describe because it's something that to be experienced, then not described.
Well, I could talk about this all day, and I would encourage folks, please come up and spend a little bit of time afterwards. We're going to take a break after this, and I really want to tout the tree experience here. It's an amazing way to look at the world in a different way.